Hi, welcome to the CLUM Collective. My name is CLUM and welcome to Thinking Out Loud. Thinking Out Loud is a video essay series I'm doing, and today is session 3. Session 3 is titled Intellectualism is Not the Norm. The way the videos are structured, first I'll give context, and then there's 3 sections. For today's video, section 1 is the call for intellectualism, section 2 is unemployment, and section 3 is education. As always, please supplement this video with your own research. I'll also add a few articles I read that I liked in my description if you would like to check them out. But today's video is not going to be very research heavy. It's mainly a rant and somewhat my perspective on intellectualism and whatnot. First, I'll give context and then I'll move into the 3 different sections. So here we go. For context, I'm going to be reading a post I posted on LinkedIn, and if you see me looking down, it's because my notes are situated here, so that's why I keep looking down. I'm still working on a setup, bear with me. But for context, why are we normalizing divisive standards? We tend to celebrate intellectual content because somewhere along the line, we lost our substance to meet the demands of algorithms. People on the internet are pathologizing and intellectualizing the day-to-day actions and experiences of other people, all in the name of fighting anti-intellectualism. This almost always leads to debates on technology, digital consumption, and intellectual content. The minute someone's topic, twang, or rhetoric does not code as intellectual, we categorize it as anti-intellectualism. Intellectualism is not the norm. This should not be surprising, living in a country as diverse as ours. Youth unemployment rate sits at 60.9%. How can we blame people for escaping the monotony of everyday life by doom scrolling? Did you know 1 in 277 academic articles contains a fabricated source? We keep on being surprised by the sudden reliance on tools like artificial intelligence when we are naturalizing standards of participation to intellectualism. This is not only unrealistic, but slowly blinds us to the fact that education is still a privilege that many do not have. Theorizing and intellectualizing the lived realities of people does not change them. Opportunity does. While access is limited, are we building bridges with our education or reinforcing standards? So that's just a quick context I gave regarding intellectualism, because we're seeing a rise in the call for intellectualism and intellectual content. And at times, this conversation is laced with privilege because not a lot of people have access to education itself. So to call for intellectualism and normalize that as the standard is very divisive. Section 1, the call for intellectualism. I feel and believe that we're calling for intellectualism and intellectual content to mitigate misinformation. Now, right now, we're living in an era where there's a lot of fake expertise, and it's difficult to distinguish what is credible because there is stuff like AI. And on social media, you start to see a lot of groupthink and fake experts. So I believe that the call for intellectualism and intellectual content is rising from this era and boom of fake expertise. And people want intellectual content to strengthen credibility. Now, it's difficult to know who's credible on social media because, 1, social media is very big. The internet is a wide space. Everyone and anyone is on the internet. And it's difficult to distinguish who has credible content and who does not. And that's why, for example, when I do post a video, I always ask people to do their own research because, again, there's so much misinformation, there's so much bias, and people don't know how to navigate the internet. It feels like after COVID, and I'll always revert back to COVID, but because of COVID, everyone massively went onto the internet, and now people don't know how to critically think anymore, and a lot of people are relying on social media to gain the information. But again, social media is social media. There's always going to be misinformation, and a lot of biases, and people don't critically think and sort out what's true, what's propaganda, etc. And to strengthen credibility, we're seeing people calling for intellectual content, we're seeing people calling for intellectualism to be the norm. And while that is a fair point, I feel like it also stems from the fact that there's so much misinformation. And the lack of critical thinking, we've started to outsource our thinking to social media, which is only natural, especially for the youth. One, we've been socialized with the internet. Internet is part of our day-to-day, and the generations after us are somewhat literate in AI, and they've been on the internet even longer than us. We don't know a world without technology, our devices, and the internet. So a lot of people are outsourcing their thinking to social media. And the difficult part of this is you don't know when someone is speaking from fact or someone is speaking based on what they heard and received from social media. And this is why we're starting to call for intellectual content, because people want to be able to discern and gain proper substance from what they're consuming online. But if everyone is just calling for the same thing and asking for intellectual content, it stems from the fact that we've somewhat lost direction. When I say we've lost direction, I'm also speaking on people theorizing and intellectualizing lived realities. I feel like people are doing this because there's a need for action and direction. And again, I want to contextualize it from the sense that people don't read the news. The news is boring for some people. From my perspective, just enjoy reading the news sometimes. Also, watching news, people don't feel and trust traditional forms of media anymore. So we've navigated and moved to social media. But as I mentioned previously, social media has a lot of biases because misinformation is so easy to fall for on social media. And people with a certain amount of following obviously will be trusted more because they have that following, but it doesn't take away from the fact that bias is still a thing. And again, social media is social media. If you're outsourcing your thinking to social media, it's bound to happen. The call for intellectualism is always bound to happen. If everyone is outsourcing their thinking to social media, no one is doing or moving traditionally in terms of reading the news, fact-checking the information they receive, and critically thinking. Section 2 is unemployment. Now, the surge of influencers is a direct result of our unemployment. The reality is, being unemployed is ghetto, for a lack of better words. The reality of being unemployed, there's mental frustration, the lack of security. It's only natural to doom scroll, because how else are you going to navigate the realities of being unemployed? There's no opportunity, there's no work, there's a pool of talent. The only natural thing for someone from my generation to do is somewhat doom scroll and escape the mental load and the reality of being unemployed by doom scrolling, being on the internet, as a way to escape this reality. And when that happens, people outsource their thinking to social media. Social media starts to become a part of one's routine to escape the monotony of everyday life, to navigate life, to navigate the current reality they find themselves in, being unemployed. And unemployment is only surging, it feels like. In the last quarter, over 300,000 people lost their jobs. And it's scary navigating this. It's scary living in such a reality. It's scary that these numbers disproportionately affect us being the youth. And I, for one, would only find it natural to scroll on Instagram, to scroll on TikTok, escape not having a job by being on the internet. And we're seeing the rise of social media influencers because of this. And two, the internet does have opportunities as well. People navigate their day-to-day using the internet. We've somewhat benefited from technology, being able to find work on the internet and put ourselves out there and somewhat gain a following to get somewhat direction. But in terms of contextualizing this as a part of intellectualism is not the norm. Our unemployment rates are seeing us move and gravitate towards technology and technological devices to escape the monotony of everyday life. And that is good and bad because we're seeing people outsource their thinking to social media. There's like a trend called social media brain. Don't take what people do seriously because a lot of people have social media brain. And social media brain is people who are chronically online, outsourcing their thinking to social media platforms and what the general trend is. And again, that's because of small factors like unemployment, the fact that we've been socialized with the internet, etc. And to sum it all up, I want to speak on education. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, is impacting learning to the core. I spoke about this in a previous video, the case for selectivism, but the methods and process of learning is changing every single day. People are incorporating AI in their form of learning. Now, I obviously encourage research, but AI learning has its benefits, and it's more so learning how to incorporate and use AI effectively and not outsource your thinking to artificial intelligence. While AI is growing, there is positive ways of using it. And with artificial intelligence and education, it's somewhat dumbing down the work because people don't know how to critically think anymore. Critical thinking isn't a tool, isn't something that's really strengthened. I've mentioned this in a previous video. So because people aren't critically thinking and we're gravitating towards convenience and ease, we're seeing people resort to artificial intelligence to learn. And again, this is only natural when we as a society and people are calling for standards to be intellectualism. If intellectualism means I'm going to get a job, of course someone's going to use AI to sound and be smarter or be perceived as intellectual because there's no opportunity. Devices like artificial intelligence act as a gateway for people to gain access, to gain opportunity, to escape tragedies like unemployment. And I call it a tragedy because having an unemployment rate that high is spooky and there's no opportunity. And this would only, like, resorting to tools like artificial intelligence only makes sense so that people can escape unemployment and gain access on opportunity. And the dependence on AI is because people are trying to meet unrealistic standards. We've naturalized intellectualism as if it's the norm. This not only blinds us to the fact that education is still a privilege that many people do not have. This entire conversation on intellectualism, intellectual content, is a privileged conversation because, one, education is still a privilege in our country and the world. Not a lot of people have access to good education. Not a lot of people have access to education, period. So us normalizing this conversation is very privileged of us, and it's divisive. It divides community because, one, a certain group of people obviously are going to call for intellectualism and intellectual substance because they find themselves in a context that demands and requires intellectual thought. But that's a small number of people. And yet this thinking is being applied to a large number of people, which is not fair and it's unrealistic. we can't naturalize intellectualism as if we are a country that is not divided, as if we are a country that does not still have accessibility problems, opportunity issues. So this conversation in itself is very privileged, and it divides community because now people already don't want to participate. And when you're saying no, you should resort and we want intellectual content, intellectualism is the norm, it's only divisive. Our standards of education are vastly different. People find themselves in very different contexts, and yet the dominating conversation is the call and need for intellectualism, which is not normal. And us acting like it's normal and naturalizing this is only creating more divisions because, yeah, and education is not the norm, it's a privilege. And sometimes that privilege is forgotten or lost because education tends to blind us. Once we're educated, we forget certain contexts, we forget certain groups of people, we forget the different day-to-day realities of certain groups of people, and we start to call and let our education blind us to the reality that, hi, I am educated, I am in a privileged position. A lot of people in my country do not have access to higher learning or education. A lot of people in my country don't even have access to quality education. A lot of people in my country don't even know how to read, and our literacy rates are not the best. So calling for intellectualism and normalizing intellectualism when it isn't the norm is very divisive. But yeah, this is just a quick rant I wanted to give and my perspective on our call for intellectualism, us normalizing and naturalizing intellectualism when intellectualism is not the norm. Please let me know what you think. Comment down below. Let me know what other topic you'd like. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.